So Dani's actually been a member of the Australian Jewish Genealogical Society and also the Australian Jewish Historical Society, which has now come together as two organisations. She's been doing genealogy for probably about 25 years. She helps us a lot with the research inquiries that we get online. And as importantly, as being the editor of Kosher Koala, which is our award-winning journal. So today we're inviting Dani to lead us into this new world of AI, which seems to be taking over our lives in more ways than one. Dani, it's all yours. Enjoy.
So hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Barbara, for your kind introduction. So there's an enormous amount of hype and hyperbole around AI right now, and every week someone announces a new tool that promises to be the thing that will finally demolish every brick wall. And at the same time, we have our resident curmudgeons who dismiss the whole thing as utterly useless and even dangerous. But in my experience, neither of these views is actually correct. What I want to do today is give you a very clear, honest, and practical picture of what AI can and can't actually do for genealogy research, and specifically for this kind of research many of us are doing, which is tracing our families through Eastern Europe, the former Soviet Union or the Middle East, and the very, very particular story of Jews who came to Australia. I'm not going to actually rank the tools or the platforms. I'm not going to make predictions about where this is all heading. I'm just going to focus on what is possible and useful right now for the work we're all doing. So let's cut through the hype and the hyperbole and get to what's possible. So let me start with a really important rhetorical question. What is AI actually doing when you type a question into it? The short answer, and I want you to remember this because it explains almost everything about AI's strengths and weaknesses, is that AI is doing very sophisticated pattern matching and pattern recognition. It's been trained on an enormous amount of data, mostly text, and it's become extraordinarily good at predicting what is plausible, coherent response looks like. Not what a correct response looks like, just a plausible and coherent one. Now, this distinction really matters because genealogy is fundamentally about accuracy. A plausible sounding answer that is wrong is worse than no answer at all because it can send you in the wrong direction and waste an enormous amount of your time. Now, the term for when an AI produces confident-sounding nonsense is hallucination. It's a slightly misleading term because it implies that the AI is confused or malfunctioning, but it's not. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do, produce fluent, coherent text. It just doesn't have a built-in mechanism that says, wait, is this actually true? So if you ask an AI about a specific archival collection, or a specific synagogue in a shtetl, or the history of a specific Jewish community in Poland, it may give you a detailed, footnoted, authoritative sounding answer that is entirely fabricated. So why does this matter, especially for us? Well, AI learns from data, and the data it's learned from to date is heavily weighted towards English language sources, Western European history, and American genealogical research. If you're researching a family from Azerbaijan or Krakow or Zaleszczyki, you're operating in territory where the AI's training data is thin, the sources are in multiple languages, the place names have changed over time across different administrative regimes, and the archives are now scattered across multiple countries. This is precisely the territory where AI is most likely to confabulate, to fill in gaps with plausible sounding invention. And when it comes to Australian Jewish history specifically, AI's knowledge is relatively sparse. It knows much less about the community records held by AJHS or the specifics of how Jewish families moved through various colonial ports like Sydney or Hobart at the end of the 19th century than a knowledgeable human researcher does. So here is the foundational principle I want you to remember. AI is a research assistant, not a research authority. A research assistant can be enormously useful, but you would never take a research assistant's output and put it directly into your family tree without checking it. Same principle applies here. So with that, let's talk about where AI is actually really useful. So transcription is probably one of the biggest practical wins for us right now. Handwritten historical documents are hard to read, whether they're in English or Russian or Polish or German or Hebrew or Yiddish, especially older documents. And this has been a major barrier, especially for those of us who can't read foreign languages. Tools like Transcribus, which was specifically designed for historical handwriting, have become dramatically more capable in the last couple of years. They have models that cover multiple languages and formats, from Polish vital records, German script documents, and even Yiddish manuscripts. And the level of accuracy is getting better and better with every iteration. A few months ago, you might remember we had the wonderful Jan Gronsky explain to us how he trained the Transcribus Yiddish models, and you can watch the video at our website if you missed it. I've included a link in PDF notes that will be posted to the chat at the end of the session, which you can download. This is Jan Gronsky's model doing the Yiddish. Now, transcription is not perfect. You still need to check the outputs, but getting a rough transcription of a document in 30 seconds rather than spending an hour puzzling over it yourself is genuinely transformative. Now, related to transcription is translation. AI is now reasonably capable at giving you a working translation of documents in most European languages. And this is useful even if you do eventually send the document to a professional translator. But Google Translate is still the gold standard. A quick translation lets you assess whether a document is worth the cost of professional translation. You can quickly check if a record is about the right family, is in the right time period, or contains the details of people you're looking for. But a note of caution here, for older, more obscure languages, abbreviations, and regional dialects, AI translation may be less reliable. At Roots Tech last month, MyHeritage released Scribe AI, which is a platform that transcribes, translates, and assesses documents and images using AI. The drawback of Scribe AI is it only seems to be able to do one page at a time right now. And I tested it using this 1843 letter written in Old German, and it was pretty accurate. So you can see it gives a whole lot of information, and it's really, really good. An area where AI can be surprisingly helpful, but people often don't think about using it, is for brainstorming or finding variants. So Jewish family names went through extraordinary transformation. They were transliterated from Arabic and Russian and Yiddish. They were anglicized during migration. They were spelled differently by different officials. But place names changed with every change of empire or administrative regime. So if you ask your AI assistant, what are the common variants and transliterations of the surname Rabinovitz, you'll get a genuinely useful list. And if you can't find a town name in Jewish Gen Town Finder, you can ask AI what it might have been known as under Russian, Polish, or Soviet rule, and it could save you a lot of research time. Just verify what it tells you by cross-checking the results in Google or JewishGen. So here's another use case. If you have a large pile of notes, transcriptions, certificates, and correspondence, AI can be quite useful in helping you make sense of it, to put it in some kind of order. In Google's Notebook LM, you can upload a series of sources, research notes, birth, death, and marriage certificates, newspaper articles, and you can ask it to draft a narrative summary or identify gaps and inconsistencies, or suggest what questions still need answering. If you've got a story already, Notebook LM can create an infographic. Give it a sec, there we go. So this is how you create an infographic. So I wanted Solomon's life journey, and it gave me this. They're pretty. You can also make videos, but I want to warn you that they can be very, very cheesy.
Let's dive into the story of Solomon Schlossman, a man who struck gold and then lost it all. In 1870, this was the value of a single gold nugget he found.
So how did he get his hands on it? And more importantly, where did all that money go?
Well, hired miners found nothing, so Solomon and his son-in-law decided to take over the search themselves. And wow, did they strike it rich. They unearthed this massive nugget, one of the biggest ever found there. But of course, trouble wasn't far behind. A former miner sued, claiming he deserved a cut of the find.
Sorry, one more use case I want to show you in this area is if you're trying to understand a complicated finding aid or a big will or a legal document, AI can summarize it for you, and you can have a conversation with the chatbot to drill down and find details that you might be interested in. So this particular example is actually in the paid version of Acrobat with its AI chatbot. But the key is these tools can help you work through problems and organize your research in new and coherent ways. You just don't want to let it do all the thinking for you. A lot of people would like AI to go out and find records for them, but right now the popular platforms like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini can't actually search genealogical databases for you in any meaningful way. These platforms do not have access to JRI Poland or Yad Vashem's central database, or even AJHS's holdings in real time. And in fact, many collections are actively protected from bot code AI sends in to answer a query. But AI can be helpful in pointing you towards the answers to specific questions if you ask in the right way. So you could ask which collections contain genealogical information or resources related to Jewish agricultural colonies in the 19th century. And ChatGPT has custom-built GPTs trained on specific data sets. So you could ask this records assistant about immigration records for people travelling to Australia in the 1920s. And in this particular case, I did ask ChatGPT to reference its answers. So down the side there, I can check and verify them. And they've got a history GPT that could explain the context of those Jewish agricultural colonies we asked about earlier. So use this way, just as a knowledgeable assistant or to create a personalized research strategy, rather than as a traditional database, AI can be very, very helpful. So we've got some ideas of what it can do. Now for the part I think is really important to understand, how it can mislead or derail your research. Remember this slide, the hallucination? I want to be very concrete about this in a genealogical context. If you ask an AI whether a particular record exists, like a specific voter roll, a ship's manifest, or a set of community records, it may tell you, yes, it will describe it in detail. It will give you what looks like a proper archival citation. But that citation may be completely invented. So let me give you a concrete example. When I was researching David Austin's family, I was trying to trace one of the children of David's sister, Fanny. Her name was Eve Desarnaux. I had a birth certificate. I knew her parents' names. And this was in the early days of ChatGPT. So I fed the information to ChatGPT, and this is what ChatGPT gave me back. Eve Marguerite Desarnaux was a French feminist and activist born on December 17, 1869, in Noumea, New Caledonia, a French overseas territory in the Pacific. She is best known for her work as a suffragette and her involvement in the French feminist movement during the late 19th and early 20th century. Desarnaux grew up in a politically active family, with her father serving as a member of the New Caledonia Assembly. So I got really excited by this. Her father was a legislator in New Caledonia. But of course, when I went to verify the details, I found a big fat nothing. It sounded plausible. It read well, but it was complete fiction. The rule is simple. Never add anything to your family tree based on an AI's claim. Always verify it against a primary source or a known reliable database. If the AI tells you a record exists, your job is to go and find the record itself, not just to take AI's word for it. Now, I want to say something specifically about AI and Australian Jewish family history. General purpose AI tools know significantly less about Australian Jewish history than they do about North American or Western European Jewish history. This is simply a reflection of the training data used on these platforms. There is vastly more digitized content about Jewish life in New York than Jewish life in Sydney. What this means practically is we all have to be especially skeptical when AI makes highly specific claims about Australian Jewish community records, institutions, or history. It's much more likely to simply make things up in this region than in areas where the training data is richer. AJHS, of course, holds knowledge and collections that AI simply does not have access to. Having a chat with an experienced researcher is worth far more than an AI consultation when it comes to specifically Australian Jewish records. Another more practical concern that I don't want to skip over is privacy. When you upload documents to commercial AI tools, you need to think about where that data goes. It is not private. Documents related to deceased ancestors from the 19th century are generally low risk. But if you're working with records that contain information about living people with addresses, dates of birth, or familial relationships, think very carefully before uploading that information to a public AI service, especially if you're using a free version. Paid versions do have more robust privacy settings. The major providers have privacy policies, and it's worth reading them. When in doubt, anonymize or paraphrase rather than uploading the original document. Skills erosion is a softer issue, but one I think matters just as much. It's more of a concern for young people who are still developing their research and critical thinking skills, but we all have to be aware of the risk. If AI writes all your research summaries, helps you interpret every document, and answers all your research questions, you may gradually lose the skill of reading those documents themselves, of sitting with the ambiguity of hard-to-read records, or developing and trusting your own judgment about sources. The researchers who get the most out of AI are the ones who use it to augment their own skills, not replace them. You have to keep doing the hard work yourself. The best use of AI is to speed up the routine tasks, so you have more time for the work that requires genuine expertise. So now let me give you a practical framework. Before using AI on any research task, ask yourself these 3 questions. Is this a pattern or a language task? Or is it a factual lookup? AI is really good at pattern and language tasks. Transcriptions, translations, summarizing, generating variants, identifying structure. It's less reliable for factual lookups. Does this record exist? What happened to this family? Who is this person? The second question is, can I verify the output against a primary source? If the answer is yes, go ahead and use AI and then verify that source. If the answer is no, Be very cautious about acting on what AI tells you. And the final question is, does being wrong actually matter here? Using AI to brainstorm name variants and then checking them yourself is fairly low risk. If you don't find anything, you've only spent some time doing what we all do anyway. But using AI to assess what happened to a family member during the Holocaust without verification, that's more of a high-risk proposition. So calibrate your caution accordingly, and if you can't verify the assertion with concrete evidence, then it is just a theory, not a fact. My suggestion is to pick one specific task you're currently stuck on in your research. Try AI on that task. Verify what it gives you. You'll start to develop your own sense of where it's reliable and where it isn't. So to wrap everything up, we can think of AI as a very well-read research assistant. And this assistant has read millions of books. It understands formal legal and metrical documents. It has an encyclopedic knowledge of history. They're articulate. They're helpful to the point of obsequious. They're available at 2 a.m, and they never get tired. But this assistant will always try to figure out what you want to hear, not what's true. They won't necessarily understand your family's specific history. They don't know the contents of major collections yet. They sometimes misremember things with complete confidence, and they know much more about Jewish families in Warsaw or Washington than they do about Jewish families in Sydney or Sandhurst. But where they can help you is in transcribing a difficult document, translating something from a language you don't speak or read, drafting a letter to an archive, brainstorming what records might exist where for what you're looking for. The tools will keep getting better, but the critical thinking skills you need to use them, the ability to evaluate a source, verify a claim, and know when to trust your own expertise, will never become obsolete. And one final confession. As you may have realised from the slides, AI actually created about 80% of this presentation. But it's the 20% that I put in that made it make sense, I hope.
Okay, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning, you said that Google Translate was the gold standard. What's your opinion of DeepL?
I've never used it. What is DeepL?
It's another translation program. Yeah, I don't know how extensive it is in terms of languages, but I've used it for German and some other languages. It seems to do all right.
Yeah, if it works, they're all getting better. I go for Google Translate simply because of the mammoth size of Google and the resources that they put into it. I don't translate you can translate from images in Google as well, but it's less reliable and it comes up with this funny kind of thing. If you've got a big document that you want to translate, it's always better to transcribe it if it's handwritten, and then copy that transcription into the translation. Sometimes it's complete gibberish, but it just depends on what you've got. Again, we're all experimenting. We're just experimenting.
We have a question from Sam about, is Jewish Gen the most reliable for Jewish records?
Jewish Gen or JRI Poland. So Jewish Gen definitely, well, they get records from JRI Poland, so they have 2 databases. They have their own Polish database, plus they draw on from JRI Poland, but you can search JRI Poland separately if you want, and that is absolutely the best source. Both of them also, if there is a live link at the end of your search record, it may link directly to the Polish archives image of that record. So that's incredibly useful. The Polish archives over the last few years have become much, much more cooperative and helpful, and they're working really well both with Jewish Gen and JRI, and of course Jewish Gen and JRI work with each other. Family Search has a thing called free full text search. If you look on their search drop down, it's an option, and that does text search on handwritten documents. So I found some stuff recently that I would not have found through their normal search engine. Stephen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I've used AI for checking what I've written. So it's sort of, can you make it better? And I think 99.9% has been fantastic. Sometimes they change a word, which you have to be careful. Like I had changed it from and to also, which if you read it quickly, you miss it, but it changes the whole meaning of something. So otherwise, I found it good. But where I'm looking for help is sort of generating. Well, I'll give you an example. I've got a copy of the ghetto list from a town from Hungary. So it's got, which is fairly rare, it's got a list of over 3,000 names, and it's in columns of the people. It's got their given name, surname, mother's name, and address where they're living in the sort of the town in the ghetto. So there's lots. I think they've got, can't remember, some other information there. Maiden name of the, if it's they're married, the woman maiden name, so things like that. So I started the information is available on Yad Vashem, and I think also on Jewish Gen. The only problem is some of it has been electronically scanned and it's wrong, and some of it has been entered by people who don't speak Hungarian, so it's like some of it is totally buggered up. And what I've started doing is putting it into Excel, which would mean that you can search, for example, people living at the same address, which could be the list in alphabetical, but if you could search it in Excel, then you could find family groupings or people whose mother's name, so on mother's name, that they're related. So I'm just wondering, I'm sort of halfway through. The other thing, I've got information on a lot of those families, other information, birth, deaths, and whatever from Jewish Gen. So I'm just wondering whether AI could help me transfer that information into Excel.
Is the list handwritten or typewritten?
Mostly it's typewritten.
Great. Okay.
90%. There's some of it additions in handwritten.
Right.
Most of it's fairly legible.
If most of it is fairly legible, my first choice personally would be to use Claude, to upload the list to Claude and ask Claude to turn it into a spreadsheet document. In fact, you could ask it to create an Excel spreadsheet. It will actually generate an XLSX file for you to download. Okay. You can then check if you. I try to get very, very specific. One of the things that I do quite often is I've got a whole lot of muddled up information, and I want to turn that muddled up information into a spreadsheet. And so I will copy it into Claude, or I will upload a document to Claude and say, turn this data into a spreadsheet with the following column headings, and I will give it the column headings. So, but you could just ask it, you could tell it that it is in Hungarian, and could it translate the column headings into English, but only the column headings? Or you could ask it to put both the Hungarian and the English in it. Another thing you could do is in Notebook LM, once you've got that, you could then upload the Excel file and the other data that you have into Notebook LM, and then you could start asking Notebook to look for those connections, find all the families living at this particular place, and it will then look at the source. So in Notebook you upload sources, and so you'd have your 2 or 3 or 4 sources, and it would look at all of those sources in order to get its answer. I mean, if there's information at Yad Vashem, you could tell it that there's information at Yad Vashem. Sometimes they do, it just depends if it can access that or not. But to start with, I would use Claude to turn the images into a spreadsheet for you, into an Excel file for you, and you will then be able to it will actually give you a download link, and you just click on that and it will download that Excel file, and you can then have a look at it, and you will then have to check it for errors, particularly if for the bits that are less legible, or for where there are mistakes. If there are bits of handwriting that go over something, tell Claude that there are a couple of areas where there are some handwritten notes, and you tell it how you want it to deal with that. And it will recognize that, and either you can tell it to ignore handwritten notes and only look at the typewritten text. So if you're very, very specific, like, treat it like a work experience person or a teenage assistant, a really enthusiastic teenage assistant. Because the thing that I've found most frustrating with AI is that you ask it something and it comes back and it's like, yeah, I found you this, and I'm really excited. This was, albeit in the early days, there was a moment where they thought prompt engineering would be a really big job, but we've moved past that very, very quickly. And prompt engineering is the actual writing of the instruction to get the thing you want from an AI. We work in natural language now, but the AIs are incredibly obsequious. And as I said, they want to please you. I say please and thank you to my assistants all the time. Oh, thanks for that. That's really good. Now do this. Like getting that caricature of me at the beginning took 4 goes, because initially I'd had one that had both my genealogy and my day job as a teleprompt operator. And so when I did the one for this, it kept my headphones on. So I had a headphone with a microphone, which I often wear at work. And so I had to say, okay, do it again without the headphone. And I wanted, like, the third one I did had a great big cross in it, and I'd said Jewish genealogist, but had a great big cross because the cemetery I'm researching does have a couple of very big crosses in it, but it was a very generic cemetery. So I actually uploaded a couple of photos of the cemetery that I wanted in the background, and it did a very good job of the coastline and of the scattered headstones. And I explicitly said, do not have any crosses, because I just didn't want to cross. What it did do is that it kind of took a lot of the colour out of the thing. So I added back in 3 seagulls that I loved in the third one, and I had to use Photoshop for that. A lot of the slides, it took me 3 goes to make the slideshow. And even then, it wasn't 100% right. So I actually added in slides from the first 2 iterations into the third one, moved them around, added holding slides. I had to create my own title slide, whole lot of bits and pieces, all of that in Photoshop. When I wrote the script was probably 90% there in AI, but I tweaked it here and there to make it a little bit more in my voice and a little bit more me, so that when I read it, because the other thing is that I work with professional speakers all the time. So I've learned a huge amount about how to write a script so that it sounds spoken. So I've read this script out 5 times to make sure it sounds like I'm not reading it, even though I know it still sounded like I was reading it. So if I'd had a teleprompter, believe me, I would have used it. If I'd been able to kind of do that on my screen, I would have used it. But it was easier for me to just use the paper. So it's a really enthusiastic but very young assistant.
What about what about handwritten lists? For example, I've got a list of cemeteries, cemetery list, which all the graves are handwritten.
Mm.
Uh,
I would
all-
use transcription first. So what language is it in?
Well, it's in Hungarian, so
In Hungarian. Okay.
well,
So if you go to transcribers, which is
yeah.
with a K, and
Yep.
you find the Hungarian model, and there might be multiple Hungarian models. So there's a couple of drop-down lists. You can search models, and if you're using the free version, then it tells you which ones are available for free and which ones are not. You find the model that you think will do the best job, and you choose the model first, and then you upload your document. It defaults, actually, I think the default model is a German one because it's a German company. So when you first go to the transcriber's site, it has a German model. You pick the model you want for the language that you're using. So then you upload the document and you let it go to town. And then once it's transcribed, there is actually an edit window, so you can put the transcription and the image side by side, and you can make corrections, and then you save it, and then you can download either just the text, or if you want to have a PDF with the image and the transcription next to each other, you can download that as well. But what I often do is I will transcribe it in Transcribers. I will then download the text and put it into Google Translate. Or the other thing I do, because often the carriage returns and the punctuation can be quite messy, is I will put it into Claude and get Claude to clean it up. I'll say this is a transcription out of Transcribers in this language. Please clean it up so that I can translate it, or just clean up the grammar, or not the grammar, because I don't want it to change it. I get it to clean up carriage returns and punctuation, and then it does that, and then I take that copy and I paste that into Google Translate. All of this is very clunky, and at some stage, like, we can bring all the tools together, but they're all different actions. So if you kind of look at it like a factory line, that you think about the different tasks that you want to achieve, and then one by one do that. I'm finding in, like, ChatGPT and Claude particularly, they write beautifully. That's what they are. They're large language models. So I will do first drafts. In Claude, Claude I use generally for writing and things like that. I'll use ChatGPT for particular questions, particularly using their GPTs, their little plugins.
The Jewish Cemetery Trust, we were able to digitize all the minutes and a whole lot of the correspondence there in the AJHS archives. How would I go about? I'm not using AI very much, so call me a beginner. How would I go about uploading the whole lot of that mass, hundreds and hundreds of pages, keeping it private, and so that I can query it on various things into the future?
At this stage, you can't. Okay. Because the free AI tools are not private. They will use it as training data.
Right.
The issue is, I take it they're mostly handwritten or typed.
Most of it's typed. There are handwritten as well.
Okay.
And handwriting is pretty good. Where you're saying that it can be like this mass material could be on my own Google Docs. If I put it on onto my Google Docs, and then would I go to one of the AI platforms and tell it just to feed off that material? Is that?
Well, they don't do that now. They don't do that at the moment. Right now, you have to upload to their system.
Okay, so I wouldn't be able to do that in person.
No. So even like I was playing with Notebook LM recently, and I saw that it had a Google Drive option, and I thought, oh, can I link a Google Drive? Can I link stuff in a Google Drive? Because I was going to experiment with something. But when I clicked on that, no, it was to upload a document from my Google Drive. So right now, you have to upload into their bucket. You can't get them to look in your bucket.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So right now,
makes sense.
Having
it just means that
stuff,
I need to wait.
So yes, you either need to wait, or if you've got like Notebook LM will deal with 50 sources. I'm not quite sure if there's a size limit on those sources. I presume there is. But if you've got, let's say, 20 documents that you want to start with, you could upload them to Google LM and experiment with that. So what normally happens is you upload, you then go and make a cup of tea, because it takes Google LM quite a lot of time to what it does is you're importing it into the system. It then has to analyze every document. And if they're big documents, that takes time. You might have to go and have lunch. And then when you come back, refresh the screen to see if it's finished. And if there is a summary up there telling you, oh, what you've uploaded is this, what would you like to know about it? And then you can start working with your sources. But if you're standing there and you're seeing the little turny wheels, or you're waiting, or there's nothing there, and you're like, what's going on? Why can't I do anything? It is the system thinking. And I got caught by this loads of times, but you've just got to, it takes time. And also, if you're a greenie, it's taking a buttload of energy. All of these data centers are sucking like gigawatts, petawatts of energy, and we are going to have huge problems. I see it as a very good use case for small modular nuclear reactors, frankly. I think data centers out in the middle of nowhere have a very good use case for thorium reactors. So, but we are still at a very, very early stage of this. We're not in Star Trek land yet, but we're moving there. Either that, or the droids are all going to kill us. And so we're either going to end up with Terminator or Star Trek. So let's hope it's Star Trek.
I think it's time for us to wrap up. I'm sure we could talk for another hour without any difficulty at all. Somebody once said, I have a dream, and I think what we've all proven today is we collectively have a dream to help us with our family research, and I hope today has inspired you all to get on that train and see what the future holds. I think it's very, very exciting. So thank you all very much for coming and joining us this morning.